Good evening, everyone. This is going to be Writing on Air tonight. Hope you all are staying warm because it has been cold the past few days. This is Writing on Air, as I've said, on KZFR 90.1. And for those of you who are just tuning in and don't know about us, this show basically takes writers from pretty much anywhere on any style of writing, airs them, and just gives them a platform for discussion. We don't really critique here. We kind of, I think there's enough people critiquing out there, so this is more of an appreciation show and where you can hear ideas and different styles and whatnot. So if you'd like to submit, please do so at write.onair@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page and a YouTube as well. So you can catch all of our shows usually a day or a few days after. Depends on how quickly I upload them, but usually within a couple days after on there, and Facebook and kzfr.org. So tonight we have some cool guests with us, and first for the show, which is neat, a call-in, if you can hear in the background there. We have with us Wren Tuatha. How are you doing, Wren?
I'm doing great.
And she is the founding editor of Califragile, famous, well-written, great human being.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, and then we have Molly Fisk with us, who is the Poet Laureate of Nevada County, and she was in, and Natalie, I'm going to let you intro this part.
Oh, Molly, you'll be reading a poem that was first published in Rattle magazine for Poets Respond. Did you want to explain that briefly for our audience?
Sure. Rattle has a wonderful feature where they ask people to respond to the news. So something that's happened during the week, you write a poem about it, you submit it on Friday by midnight, and they choose on Saturday, and it's published on Sunday, which is so different from the, how about waiting for 2 years before your poem comes out, tradition of the rest of the world. So it's been a wonderful platform for people. I think they've done it now for 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And this is my second poem that has been there, and the nice thing about them is that they get shared so much.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out for our audience because Rattle is an excellent magazine for writers and just as a literary review. It features excellent writing in it, so I wanted to be sure to point that out. That's a huge accomplishment for you.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, very cool. I didn't know about that until just coming on this show. So, well, our show is 30 minutes long, so it's pretty quick. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. I think we'll do Molly first, and then Wren, and we'll finish up with Wren's pieces as well. So, Molly, do you have your piece ready?
I do.
Cool. Whenever you are ready.
Particulate matter. If all you counted were tires on the cars left in driveways and stranded beside the roads, melted dashboards and taillights, oil pans, window glass, seatbelt clasps, the propane tanks in everyone's yards, though we didn't hear them explode, R13 insulation, paint inside and out, the liquor store's plastic letters in puddled colors below their charred sign, each man-made sole of every shoe in all those closets, the laundromat's washers round metal doors. But then Arco, Safeway, Walgreens, the library, everything they contained. How many miles of electrical wire and PVC pipe swirling into the once blue sky? How many linoleum acres? Not to mention the valley oaks, the ponderosas, all the wild hearts and all the tame, their bark and leaves and hooves and hair and bones, their final cries. And our neighbors, so many particular, precious, irreplaceable lives that despite ourselves, we are inhaling.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that last stanza gave me the chills because I was thinking of the Carr fire over the summer prior to the campfire and just the idea of inhaling things. And yeah, I love that you started with stores and plastic letters and then you got into those little details of people and our neighbors and so many particular precious irreplaceable lives that despite ourselves we're inhaling. And that was a thought that occurred to me when that Carr fire was happening because I'm from Reading, and that last stanza just totally got to me in my heart. That was beautifully written. Your structure of this poem, can you describe why you chose to structure it the way that you did in these 4 little parts?
I'm pretty organic about how I structure things. So these are 3-line stanzas, and they're very long lines, and it just felt like that was how the poem unfurled. I don't really have a logic for it. It seemed like it could. I was trying to contain everything. I mean, not everything, but I was trying to sort of show all the different kinds of things that had happened, and it was so uncomfortable to think about that it seemed to be good to get more and more specific.
Yeah.
And intimate, really. What strikes me about the fire poems that we're getting with Califragile is the need to sort of think in terms of lists, but also they can't escape the intimacy.
Well, it's really personal to be breathing in somebody else's life.
Yeah.
And certainly that's what we were doing up here for 5 or 6 days. And the other thing is I live in terrain that's very, very similar to Paradise, so people are afraid and planning a lot and doing a lot of work trying to figure out how to cope with what happens if we were to burn down.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, oh man, there's lots of stuff going on here. But, it's been real for Californians for a long time. And certainly since whenever that was in 2015, since the first really big bad fire that was a summertime wildfire, everybody started to think more about it. But it was only after the Carr fire in Redding that everybody here suddenly put their go bags together.
Yeah.
And, it's hard to write about stuff that's difficult material. So one way to do it is to tone down the emotion and be a little more calm and practical sounding. Because people can take that in more easily. And then I have sort of a general habit of zapping them in the last line. Which I don't do on purpose, but that's what my poems do all by themselves. So.
Yeah, and I love that you mention like actual structures like a Safeway, a Walgreens, library, and then you go into like the more intimate detail after. But that last little bit there is just like a sucker punch in the end. And I just thought that was so eloquently put together, and it's just smart poetry. Beautifully written.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say some things, but I honestly feel like you two covered the whole thing. It was very beautiful. Looking at the piece from my perspective, I'm kind of sitting to the side here. It looks like claw marks scarring across the paper. So maybe that stylistic choice wasn't intentional, but it kind of comes across that way for me. Very deep and scarring, obviously, because this is what this does to people. It really leaves marks,
Yeah.
Very, very well written.
And everybody brings their own interpretation to both the language and what it looks like on the page.
Yeah. Exactly. As the Califragile editor, I was an evacuee, and of course, so I sort of shut down submissions, except for campfire poems. And I wanted to write something for Rattle, but I'm not a fast writer. And so I wanted to see who's written something about the campfire. And I went to Rattle, and I had to scoop this up and write to Molly and say, can I put it in Califragile? And it's just such a great addition.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, it really depends on whether you can write immediately or not. And I tend to write about what's going on around me in real time. So in that way, I'm a good fit for their process. They certainly do take poems that people have worked on for years, and so that anybody who wants to can submit in any kind of different way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Molly, you'll be with us for the rest of this show, and I thank you for that piece. So feel free to chime in on anything you find interesting or whatever in these next few pieces that we read. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead, Wren.
Okay. So the first piece I want to read is by Terry Adams and is called For Oakland Police Officer John W. Grubensky, who died in the Oakland Hills Fire, October 20th, 1991. Some of the dead leave us in the form of a statue whose sculpting contains the last breath, the ducking down, as in a water game, into the body of into the sanctuary of body. They submit as they gave in to coming, burying their face as the last instant beside the lover, or closing over a child found fleeing in the street, as the policeman appears at the end in all of us, maybe, and bends himself around one who's already helpless, trying to be a different world for the child, or trying to be air.
Oof. That one is haunting.
Yeah, very insular compared to a list.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But ending in the same kind of way, where you're inhaling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Trying to be air.
Mm-hmm.
You read this. You read this at Blackbird, right?
I think I did, yeah.
Yeah, and I held the picture of the
That's
actual
right.
police
Right
officer.
there. You were my Vanna White.
I was, yes. I know Wren from Poetry Reads, too, and you can see her Wednesday night at Poetry Night at Blackbird at 7 o'clock? 6?
I think I said 5:30ish. I'm not sure.
5:30ish,
Yeah,
yeah.
5:30ish. Sorry, I can never remember. One thing I've always admired about you, one, is that you always celebrate other writers, and two is that Wren, I just found out actually, the reason why she has this beautiful delivery in her poetry when she reads it is you used to perform. You were a performance poet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Long time ago when I had much better health and energy, I was in film school, and so I certainly had that sort of sense of theater, and I would go to the open mics, and there were slam poets there. One friend of mine would say, "Oh, I at any one time have 20 poems memorized." So I took that as a challenge, and so I got to the point of having 30 memorized. Now mine are much shorter than his, so, but yeah, and just trying to approach it as an actor doing a soliloquy was my sensibility.
Wow. Well, I wanted to touch on this piece too one last time before we move on to the next one. I really do like the theme that it's going for here, talking about obviously like someone who gives their life during a service, having that taken during that service. That's usually a really prominent theme on any sort of tragedy, be it a fire or whatever types of accidents that are out there. So
Right. Although that was in reference to a different fire, it felt important to include it.
Yeah. They definitely all have their own tragedies to them, and I'm glad you include this one. It's a very good piece. Yeah. What is your next piece for us?
Let's see here. Well, let's see. I'm going to jump in here and do a poem that I have not included in the hashtag campfire on Califragile, but it's one that I'm working on from my experience in the campfire, but actually I started it during the Carr fire. So it's like Molly being at that distance and experiencing and having this sort of insular experience, but needing comfort and reassurance and dealing with it. So it's one of mine. It's called Carr Fire, 10 Nights Without Stars. And it starts with an epigraph. Sometimes a circle feels like a direction. Louise Goffin. The wildfire smoke is a stadium ceiling over California, makes the air alien planet orange. My exhales are a timepiece inside claustrophobia. Refugees from Redding find me through FEMA, carpet my cabin with donated bedrolls. Jasmine tea tastes like a circle. Lavender is a plush scarf on my tongue, dousing nerves, corralling hands. Raja, the feral peacock, comes for sunflower seeds like clockwork. A clock with hands broadcasting seeds, and we watch ash fall like lost, molested snow. Small talk vigil, eyeing the tree-lined circumference for any flame, casting protective circles. Cardamom biscuits and local honey, peach lemonade fuzz at my lip. If fire as weather licks this grass here, Raja, the phoenix, uncatchable, inflammable colors of car oil in street puddles. I'm so sorry. He prunes a breast feather, shades of wizards and tumbled gemstones, mask research, email alerts, escape routes, stats on homes, outbuildings, grandchildren burned. 10 days and nights under suffocation of a blanket the size of a spaceship we could escape in. Take us. I count my fare. Central Valley, desert farming, oranges, rice, and almonds. A poem on good intentions. Fantail feathers. Payment to saviors from the stars. We're so sorry. Raja is innocent. Please, take him too. Yeah.
So what is the significance of Raja to this poem? I always wondered that because I feel like I've heard Raja's name come up before.
You have. Raja was a feral peacock, was around our part on Nimshu Ridge and would visit several neighbors, including us. And I actually wrote a poem, The Emperor of Nimshu, which ended up in Peacock Journal. Yeah. Not that I recommend sending the animal that the journal is named after. Not a good thing to do, but they accepted that one. And so he's been a character for me. And this was the poem that I started and was working on when he stopped coming around. Okay. And don't know what has happened to him, what his story was. But had to accept that he's a wild animal. Yeah. Feral animal. Yeah. For me, looking at the idea of a peacock in this poem, and then all of the lavender, the jasmine, the exotic things that are mentioned in here, and then Raja as a phoenix, and the idea of flames and a fire. I just think it's this beautiful melding together of all these ideas, and this not seeing a fiery sky like that every day, and then juxtaposing that feral peacock in there. I just felt like it was a really excellent choice. Yeah, and the fact that it's real too, like it's something that really happened, and it's a really specific moment that you chose. And I just, that's why I had to ask you, because I know I remember Raja from another poem I heard you read, that these are just really excellent choices that you've made here. Well, thank you. And certainly as the Carr fire was going on, we have a goat herd. We have all these animals. We were crowdfunding for our goat boat at that time. We didn't have it yet. And we had it in time for the campfire, and we got out okay. But we wouldn't have been able to capture him or to help him in any way. And we had this relationship with him, so we just, it was very painful to think of.
I'm really liking the themes that we've been touching on so far of the breathing. There's exhales in this. There's looking at the atmosphere, the air, mainly because I think that out of all the things that we would talk about when there's, I guess I'll pull back a little bit. When it comes to like significant catastrophic events, fire is an interesting one because unlike maybe an earthquake, where most people hear about it and then maybe feel it for a few seconds. If it's a big one, it's just there, gone, and then it's done. If you're farther away, fire can last significantly longer, and it doesn't necessarily have to burn to do damage somewhere. Mainly it changes the atmosphere for miles and miles around, so it affects a very larger area. And most of the time people die of smoke inhalation not the actual fire that being burned as is. And that is a really unique, I guess, reference point that all these pieces so far have kind of like touched on a little bit. That is very, very accurate to like what actually happens. It's very, very, makes it very real to read this. I also love just this one part right here. Fall like lost molested snow, small talk vigil, eyeing the tree-lined circumference for any flame, casting protective circles. It has, this whole piece kind of, for me at least, evokes this sort of witchy vibe to it, which I just
unavoidable.
Love. Yeah, I love that idea of taking this catastrophic event and turning it into this sort of, I feel like I'm in India for some reason, and I'm,
With Raja.
yeah, and like this seaport or something, and all these strange things are happening, and you're turning this awful thing into this beautiful event instead. And Raja's now a phoenix rising from this ash. So I just think that's what a poet does, is take something like catastrophe and makes it beautiful.
Thanks. Well, I was really sort of thinking about the things that were comforting me, and actually sort of the genesis of this was the Louise Goffin line, and I guess that I like that line from her song. And so when I was drinking some which tea is the circle, the jasmine tea, I don't know why, but I said to my partner, this jasmine tea tastes like a circle, and it's just one of these little bits, little shiny things that I kept saving, and they ended up being used here.
Beautiful.
Any thoughts on your end, Molly?
Just the poets are allowed to think this way,
As
and we get good at it.
Yay.
think and are encouraged.
Yeah.
Or at least ideally should be encouraged.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, well, we're nearing the end, so let's go ahead and get in your next piece here.
Okay. Another Terry Adams piece. So everyone definitely check out califragile.org for other poets. This one's called Secondhand Mule. It's an ekphrastic poem that is inspired by a photograph that a photojournalist from the San Jose Mercury News put out. And he wrote this: Secondhand Mule. Someone catches a mule, ties her to a sign by the highway with a bucket of water, then leaves, fleeing the fire. The mule is leaning hard, pulling her rope taut toward the white line, the highway still unmelted, air full of smoke. Cars and trucks pass, but it's not clear what kind of help would help. Bucket melts from the bottom up, the water escapes. Someone thinks to take a photo of a mule tied up so we know the story, how even freedom is useless at some point. So you held up that picture for me at the reading too.
I remember the mule. Can you explain your choice on this poem? And why Terry Adams? I noticed that's twice now.
Well, I like his poetry, both of his, as sort of ambassador pieces for the hashtag campfire, because they're short and compact, and
And very visual.
And very visual. And there are a couple of different ways. There are lots of Liszt's poems, and Molly's is one of those, where people kind of think about and this thing and this thing and this thing. And then other poets have taken the theme in a different direction and gone very insular with a single image.
Yeah.
And, of course, I'm very animal oriented. Yeah. No surprise there. And so this piece just really, really talked to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention these pieces so far are so whiplash-like, which is exactly how the campfire was. It was a weekend, pretty much. It was just like lightning, and everyone was displaced. So these pieces kind of mimic that like instantaneous feeling. Yeah,
I looked up the article trying to find, because I knew he was referring to some picture he had seen. So I researched to find it, and I read the article that went with it, and I think it was implied that it was actually a donkey got out, just in case listeners are wondering, that someone did get him or her.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Well, we're actually right at the end. This show always goes by so quick. I sometimes wish I had longer. 30 minutes is a good time period, but sometimes it feels like lightning. I wanted to talk a little bit about your califragile, and then I'm going to put both of you guys on the spot for a really kind of quick shoot from the hip answer. So cool. You had a little quote here you want me to read, so I'll read that, and then you can explain maybe a little bit about califragile for us. So about califragile, and this is Scott Sershart.
Okay.
I think that's the name of it. It's an interesting spelling. Califragile promotes writing that steps up, without fear and with eyes wide open, to the calamity of our current conditions. Their poems walk along the fault lines to investigate the fragilities, not just within ourselves, but also those around the globe. That is a good preface.
Yeah, so that is actually from a larger article about immigration and immigrant poets and whether or not they have access to the stage as poets. And referencing Califragile, because we had a call for submissions about immigration. And so I appreciate that quote. That's our first press.
From the Portland Review.
Yeah, Califragile actually just started in March of 2017 around themes of climate change and social justice.
Wow. Huh. Very interesting.
Yes, she has a book.
It's a beautiful name.
It
Oh,
is.
thank you.
And we should also plug, you have an up-and-coming book.
I do. My first chapbook is Thistle and Brilliant from Finishing Line Press. And it's going to be in its promotional period. It's actually coming out June 21st, but you'll be able to order it now through April 26th.
Wow.
Pre-order it.
We'll have to get you back on the show to promote that a little
Absolutely.
bit more, too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you'll be at the bookstore reading?
Yes, on March 15th, Friday, March 15th at 6:30, I'll be doing reading campfire poems and from Thistle and Brilliant at the bookstore on Main Street in Chico. And before that, on March 10th, I'll be at the Butte County Library, the Chico branch, doing a talk on how to get your poetry published.
And don't worry if you didn't catch that or didn't write it down on our Facebook post, we will include that information. So
Yeah, I'm definitely going to put a post up about that because I'm probably going to be at that event.
there we go. It's a meet and greet for Writing on Air as well.
Yeah.
And any upcoming events or anything you want to add on as well, Molly?
Poetry's alive and well in Butte County, I hear.
Yeah.
Now, up here we have something called the Sierra Poetry Festival, which is on April 27th, all day long, and a bunch of nationally known poets will be here. Some workshops, some poetry out loud, some kids' poems. It's a pretty widespread and varied day. So I recommend that to everybody to put on their calendars if they want to take a little ride into the foothills.
Will do.
Yeah, I actually put a post up about that on our Facebook page. I was in Nevada City a few weeks ago, and I saw a flyer for that, and that seems like there's a big writing scene over there in Nevada City, so I would encourage people to go check it out. That seems like a really excellent event for writers.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put you both on the spot now because we only have like about 2 minutes left, so this is going to be kind of like the last grain of truth. I'll start with Wren here, and Molly, you can think about it. I usually ask people at the end of the show, what would be their advice to new incoming writers who want to start kind of touching on this art style? What advice would you give them?
Oh, well, my first advice would be to go to my library event where I can talk more at length about it.
Perfect.
But I would have ideas like free yourself from the tyranny of sentences and take the word I out of your poems.
Word I in your poems. Beautiful. And
Those
Molly,
are good. Those are very good.
same question, Molly.
I really think people need to read a lot of poems. So I would be doing some work
For yourself.
learning more about who's popular now and who was popular in 1850 and trying to get a sense of how the art has changed over the years. I think memorizing is really important. Don't ever memorize something that you don't love because it'll be in your bloodstream for the rest of your life. But find something that you like and start small, and it's much easier to memorize if you're taking a walk. So somehow walking brings the body into it more, and you remember things more quickly and more deeply.
Yes. Molly, we'll have to have you back on the show as well sometime.
You can.
Well, this is definitely the end of our show, unfortunately. I squeezed in as much as we could. I wanted to say thank you to both of you because this was absolutely remarkable. Yeah, I don't even know
You're
what else to
welcome.
say. This was fantastic.
Thank you so much for
Very
supporting Califragile.
Yeah, no worries. Well, have a good night, everyone, and I hope you all enjoyed the show.
All right.